have to really uh, pay attention to what's going on, and it's just so many opportunities, and not necessarily saying that you have to, live in Africa, but you're not just going to give up your birthright and your heritage like that. So we have to make that connection. I think it's imperative that Black folks do that, in order to prepare things for your children, your prodigy, the people who comes after you. It's so important. So we have to look in that, 'cause other countries and other ethnic groups, they do that. You got to look 50 years, 25 years down the road, and what's going to take place. And I really think Africa is the key, and I think it'll give us more respect as a race of people. I think I was watching a lecture that talked about, if something happened to the Asian population in this country, guess what? Asia is making some calls to the government, like, what's going on? We have some terrorist threats towards, our citizens over there. What y'all going to do about it? And we have to do that and establish that kind of relationship with Africa. And I think that's the only place that we can really get that type of backing from. Is from Africa, and you have all the natural resources there, things like that. So Africa is the future. I beat that drum anytime and every time I get a chance to beat that drum, because I truly, in my heart, I truly believe it. And it's not just hyperbole. It's just, I know it in my heart, and it's from facts, it's from research, and it's from putting a lot of years into this. So I truly believe this.
All right. Well, speaking of beating drums, we have a guest today who is actually a percussionist, and we're going to introduce him in just a few moments. But I just wanted to let you know that tonight at Larchmere Arts, we're going to have a fantastic artist on our stage. Her name is Kim Essence Hunt Edge, and she's a spoken word artist, and she's also a visual artist. So you'll be able to hear her and you'll be able to see her work. And on the stage with her will be Elijah Gilmore, who is the guest that I'm going to welcome to the stage at this moment. Now, I just have to let you know that we had another guest that was scheduled today. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but Brother Elijah agreed to step in and grab the time and run with it. So we're going to talk about a number of things today. First of all, let me give you a proper introduction. Elijah Gilmore is a jazz recording artist, a drummer, and percussionist. He's toured with Gladys Knight, Najee, Gerald Beasley, and Joe McBride, among others. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2020, and he played drums in the movie Judas and the Black Messiah and released the album Return to Zen. In addition to all of that, Elijah is the president of the Cleveland Musical Artists Community, and we're going to talk about that today. This is officially the unveiling of this organization, as it has not been publicly presented as of yet, but today is the day that we announce to the world that the Cleveland Musical Artists Community has been established, and we're really pleased that Brother Elijah has agreed to serve as the president of this organization. So with all that said, welcome to 360 Info Network, Elijah Gilmore. How you doing today, brother?
How you doing, Vince? Thanks for having me. How you doing, Mr. Hampton?
Yes, sir. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you, sir.
All right. So as we get started, I want to give you an opportunity to share with the audience exactly who you are, because I know you're involved in quite a few things. You have an entity called Tribe of Eli. I know emotional intelligence is the language that you promote. You also have an initiative that you would like to have passed into law, and we can talk about that as well. And you're doing musical things around the city. So you are definitely someone who is involved in the art scene. And of course, Brother Antonio knows that I'm very passionate about the art, but there's an intersection between art, public safety, mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. And here at 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer, we are about all of those things. So Elijah, share with us some of the things that you're involved in and exactly what you want us to know about.
Again, thank you, fellas, for having me here, and thank you for the work that you all are doing in our community. We appreciate you both. And excuse me, Mr. Hamtonio, for not
No, no
saying
problem,
your
my
name.
brother. No problem.
So, would you like me to speak about CMAC first or the Tribe of Eli organization?
Talk about the Tribe of Eli organization.
Okay. So we started the Tribe of Eli organization to teach our community emotional intelligence by way of the arts. And we've seen the impact it's had on our communities, where people have better self-awareness, better communication and conflict resolution skills, better empathy, better confidence through them developing their emotional intelligence. We've took the program to House of Blues, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, New Bridge Arts and Technology, um, a little bit of everywhere, Palace Theater, and we're very excited to be collaborating and partnering with CMAC as well.
Okay. So with that said, we can introduce to the audience what we're calling CMAC. It is Cleveland Musical Artists Community. And we'll make it clear that this is not a union per se, but what
Mhm.
we are doing is we are representing the interests of musicians when it comes to things that are related to protections that unions provide for musicians. So it's been a journey. We have a constitution and bylaws. We have officers. And we're doing some foundational works and creating relationships within the community of musicians here in Cleveland. I will ask you, Elijah, why do you think that it's important for musicians in this town to be unified?
Well, we're going to get some of the desires that we want to see in our artist community accomplished when we unify. And that's what's beautiful about CMAC. We're artist advocacy organization, and our focus is on equitable pay, professional development, education on the music business, and us being able to accomplish our goals by coming together as a team. And again, advocacy for the artist community in Cleveland.
Yes. Well, I would agree that advocacy is extremely important. We have a bunch of things going on right now. There is talk of a music commission being formed by Cuyahoga County. And within that, there is legislation that is being considered in Columbus, House and Senate. You've got folks on both sides of the fence. You've got Jamie Callender and you've got Kent Smith, and they have three bills that are being discussed in Columbus right now. And the objective of the Cleveland or the Cuyahoga Music Commission, they're calling it Cuyahoga Live at this point. The objective of it is to bring folks to Cleveland, to bring Clevelanders out, to bring folks from outside of Cleveland into venues in the city to experience live music, because there is an economic benefit to our community when performances take place. Bar owners and venue owners can sell alcohol and food to their patrons and generate profits, and then those dollars find their way into the economy of the city of Cleveland and surrounding communities. So this is a really important task that is being discussed right now. As I understand it, there is going to be a gathering on December 11th at the 66th, which is in the Midtown Collaboration Center. There will be more forthcoming on that, and we will make sure that the public knows about this. I'm not sure that the entire county is invited to this particular meeting, but I do know that it is going to take place and different people will be invited to it. But again, I just want to point out the importance of this, because we're living in an age where musicians are taking a back seat to others. There was a survey that was done by entities in this community, and it was determined that the average pay of a musician in Cleveland is over $380 per gig. But Elijah, you're someone who performs regularly in Cleveland, and I would have to say that you being paid that much for a gig is probably the exception more than the rule. You have touring experience, so I know you've probably experienced the high end of pay, but when it comes to performing locally, depending on the venue, you're not seeing that type of pay. Can you corroborate what I'm sharing with the audience?
Well, that's partially true. If you're dealing with the corporate booking scene, weddings, private parties, things like that, it's usually anywhere from 400 to 500. On the low end, maybe, like you said, 350 or something like that. So that's about right. About 400 is the low end that most people are getting through corporate booking. Again, that's private parties, weddings, anything on that level. The bars on the west side pay about 250 a man, maybe 300. On the east side, the most you'll get right now is about 150 to 200. Depending if it's 2 hours or 3 hours. So I noticed that there's a difference between when I go do a wedding on the corporate community. They may offer the band $5,000 for a 10-piece band, and we all may walk away with $500 each. If I go do something not going through the agencies on the east side in the urban community, they may say, "Hey, Mr. Gilmore, we have $500 for you," and I say $500 a man. They'll say, "No, $500 for the whole band, and we got some Fago and chicken wings for you." But meanwhile, we were making $500 a man with the corporate agencies, eating on steak and lobster tail and drinking with a cigar in our mouth. So, I guess it just depends on who you're working with. And I want to say this, and this has always been true. We are worth whatever we say we're worth. It's just finding the right clientele or customer base. So if I'm trying to sell a Ferrari, I'm not going to do it with people who buy Fords, but I can sell a Ferrari if I have the right clientele. As it relates to the urban clubs and bars, they're able to pay us a little more. It's like you said, the musicians haven't been united. And so there hasn't been anybody to advocate or to show us how to go about uniting as well. So I think what we're doing with CMAC is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so if you could elaborate on what some of the issues are amongst ourselves. I know that the phenomenon of undercutting takes place, and sometimes someone will come to a band and they'll give them a price and an agreement will be made, and then someone else will come in and say, well, we can do it for a smaller figure. And so because the bar owner or the venue owner is operating on a low profit margin, they'll take advantage of the situation and hire a band that they can pay less. Can you say that type of thing is happening? And I guess the bigger question is, what can we do about it?
It is happening, unfortunately, and this is why us coming together with the CMAC organization is a beautiful thing, because the more unified we are, the better chance we have of being able to get better pay for our community, because everybody's unified. When they know, hey, we can go to a few groups who will come in under the bar, it doesn't help us to get our desired outcome as far as better pay, especially in the economy we're in. Everything's went up: gas, candy bars, nobody, I think I want to go get a candy bar. It was like $3. You remember when candy bar was like 50 cents or something like that, so why are we still making 1988 money? And it's because they know that there are enough bands that will come in and undercut. Meanwhile, the bands that won't, that are standing on business, they're just not working at those establishments, because you can talk to Lim Adams for Forecast, you can talk to Horns and Things, you can talk to Tribe of Eli, and we'll say, yeah, we don't come out the house for those numbers, but we find places that will accommodate us, even if it means going to the West Side. But we would like to see everybody be taken care of, but it will require us to stick together.
Yeah. Brother Antonio, you've been involved in staging festivals, and you've hired some of the top names. I can remember when you did a festival down at Voinovich Park, and I believe you had Michael Calhoun and his version of the Daz Band. You've had some of the other prominent bands.
Horns
in
and
the
Things
city.
and all of those guys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what has your experience been in terms of hiring bands and providing compensation for them? And I'm just curious about what their requirements for compensation have been.
Yeah, my situation is a little bit different, but I have experienced that in my performance times as well. I have to look at it. I look at it like this. It seems like when we deal and talk about our community as an African American community, and we're going to have issues just like you just brought up, because it seems to me pretty much on most fronts, the functions that we do tend to never have the budget that we hope to have in order to pay our artists. We always seem to, you just talked about the disparity between how the West Side bars pay you versus what the East Side bars pay you, and the question to be asked, do they have the finances to do it, or are they just being tight? That's the question, and for my many years of living in Cleveland, and you seeing startups at different lounges here and there, they tend not to last that long. You get that new peak, of folks coming, but I don't think we have the population to support some of these local businesses. We was close to 1 million strong, back in the day, but now the total white and black population is at $300-something thousand, or maybe it might even, thousand. I'm sorry, 1,000 people. And it might even dip below that. So I wonder, if the establishments themselves are able to even, afford in doing that. And I know you was talking about, giving some type of supplement to help the bars. I think that's what the CPAC thing would be, maybe working on as well. But CMAC, and so I've experienced that, and I, as far as in answering your question about the bands, I tried my best to give them the fee that they were asking for. I that's what I tried to do, and tried to raise enough money to make that happen for them.
Yeah.
But again, I was around the city struggling and trying to raise the dollars for them. And I'm saying I think other entities might be in the same position of trying to have the budget in order to pay the artists.
Well, I think one of the things that has not been factored into the equation is the fact that inflation is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And the cost for everything goes up. So bar owners are having to pay more for their liquor. They're having to pay more for their food, and I think that's one of the reasons that this legislation is being considered. So what they're talking about doing is they're talking about providing rebates to venues that have 3,000 or fewer seats. And they're talking about rebates of up to $100,000. So for a venue that has a very slim profit margin, that rebate is going to be increasingly significant. And I guess what's on the table is, with the availability of these funds, the supplement that comes to their income as a result of legislation that is passed, some of the benefit of that can be passed along to the folks who are being hired to do entertainment in the city. When I mentioned the $386 a gig, that was a median income. So there are musicians, i.e. Cleveland Orchestra, when they do a performance, they make much more than that. But when you average it out and you consider the person that's paying getting paid $50 or, $80 or $100 to do a gig, and you juxtapose that against someone who's getting paid $600, $700, $800, maybe $1,000 for a performance, you can see that there is a market disparity between what some are getting and what others are getting. And I think the real issue is somehow we have to level the playing field so that most of us or many of us are on the short end of the stick. Elijah, you brought up the disparity between the West Side and the East Side, and it's like, well, why would you want to perform on the East Side if you know that you can go to the West Side and get more bang for your buck, so to speak? It just seems so unfair. But then you also have to realize that we have different populations on both sides of town. I mean, historically, Cleveland has been one of the most segregated cities in the country. So I would venture to say that the music being played on the West Side might be a little bit different than the music being played on the East Side. And so we have these different layers. I'm just going to call it for what it is. It's racism, and we're dealing with racism as a public health crisis. And if it's a public health crisis and the public is privy to creating and providing tax dollars, then somehow we have to equalize this so that there are those who don't have to suffer and accept lower pay than others just because of the side of town that they're playing on. What are your thoughts about that, Elijah?
So I can contest. I have made 6, 7, 8, and higher, 15, 25, depending on the gig, depending how long I'm there, how many musicians, what's my job. And I know that racism at one point was bigger than it is now. And this, I believe it's still alive, definitely. I don't know if this thing is more of a racism thing, because I was working with the groups on the West Side, and I'm an African American man, and I think it's more demographics, and we could say, hey, maybe in this demographic of people who make this type of income, it's primarily, for instance, I'm just making something up, white people, Jews, and Asians. I'm just making something up. Maybe they make up the bulk of the people who can afford to pay your band $5,000, versus if you're on the East Side, maybe the people that are hiring you primarily are in a demographic of a pay scale that they can't pay you that. And I have to go back to what Hamtonio said. Is it that they can't, or is it that we just have a different mentality? You know what I mean? Like, is it that you really can't? That's. I thought that was a great question. And maybe sometimes people can't afford it, But all I know is at the end of the day, regardless if your client is green, blue, yellow, you have to stand on your business or what you believe your value is, and find the clients that can afford your services. Because there's no sense of crying about if somebody's saying that's the best they can do, whether it's true or not. And the good thing about it is CMAC is going to try to help these companies that so-called don't have the money to get the money. And we don't know if some of them really do have the money, but this could help out in the urban community more. So that's the great thing.
Yes. Just want to post a comment here coming from Hugh People, and it states that compliment to Lynn Hampton for having been a fair employer of our services over the years. So we thank you, Brother Hamptonio, and Hugh People is thankful as well for what you have done for them over the years. So I think it's important to say that. We're going to step away for just a moment, and we will be right back after we hear this word from our title sponsor. So bear with us, and we will hear from the Cleveland Observer.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
So once again, our thanks to the Cleveland Observer for what they are bringing to our platform. We're actually looking at creating content that is cross-pollinating our two organizations. We are in the business of bringing information to the public, and we will continue to do that. So again, thanks to the Cleveland Observer for what they do for Cleveland, Ohio, and surrounding communities. We're going to continue the discussion. We have aboard with us Brother Elijah Gilmore. He is the founder and creator of Tribe of Eli, and he is also the founder, and he's actually the president of Cleveland Musical Artists Community. So thanks to him for coming aboard today, and we'll continue to work through what we're doing here on 360 Info Network. I want to ask the question, or just bring up the idea that when it comes to what people pay to access musical entertainment, we have this inflation issue, but at the same time, because of inflation, people have fewer dollars and they're not really willing to spend as much as they would for local entertainment. So I just want to ask how you feel about that. I mean, I'm looking at the situation at Larchmere Arts. And what happens at Larchmere Arts is that, you know, we've seen the pandemic come and go. And because of the pandemic, people were stretched in terms of their dollars. And then we had inflation kick in, and people still want to pay what they paid back in the day, you know, but the cost of providing food, as I said earlier, the cost of providing drinks for people, the cost of bringing in entertainers, because they're affected, they want to get more bang for their buck too. So, you know, I guess the question is, what can we do to bring people into the real world and to understand that, you know, everything goes up and so does the cost of being entertained. Brother Antonio, I'll ask you that question first. What are your thoughts?
Repeat that again, Vince, the summary of it. I was writing something down. My bad.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, you know, in a large way, just like pay has been held down, what people are willing to spend on entertainment is also being held down. And you know, I think about the fact that, you know, we have folks like Elijah who tour with national musicians and get paid on a certain level. And when people attend those concerts, they'll pay, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80, $100. And the same person who's playing in a band with a national entertainer plays in a local band, and folks are hesitant to pay, you know, $5 or $10 or, you know, $15 to say to see the same person. You know, so I just what you thought about that.
That's strange right there, and that's always been an issue, you know, with us. I you know, again, it's kind of like what we used to. It's our mentality in reference to that. you know, and actually there's always been a problem, you know, for us as a community. And I've seen artists, you know, complain about that all the time. And again, I have to go back and, you know, to that question, you know, do they have the funds, or is it just a mindset that we are prone to and used to? You know, that's the question. You know, we don't know. You know, and just to flip it, let me flip this on the other side of that. You know, just something to think about. Uh, Other communities and other ethnic communities. And it's a question that we just need to ask ourselves. Do other ethnic groups charge their constituents or their other ethnic patrons the same price? You know, and we can say that across the board. Do they give them the breaks that we'll be looking for in our ethnic community? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there as a question. I wonder, do they, you know, when you have the Jewish community doing enough and they trade and work amongst themselves, do they give them a break? You know, and then when it comes to them dealing business with somebody outside of their community, do they give them, I mean, do they charge them full price for it? That's what I used to say a lot of times when I was out there drumming. You know, I was bringing their culture back to them. You know, so I wasn't trying to sell them the culture. So money was never an issue to me because you know I knew what I was doing. I was on a mission of bringing our culture back to our people. You know, but at the same time, you know, I think as Brother Eli would say, you know, that we tend to um, understand we tend to understand that dealing with our folks, we usually have to massage our prices and things when it comes to us, you know. So I don't know if we got into that rut and used to doing business with one another like that and looking for you know, some negotiation power or whatever, or is that a normal situation? Because do other ethnic groups when they get together and selling services and stuff to each other, do they look for a break, or do they ask for a break, or do they pay the same price as everybody else? That's the question.
Could I answer that?
Sure.
So, like, you know, when any other ethnic group uh, is going to spend their money on a service, they take it to their people, not expecting a hookup, but they expect to do business with their people to keep their community strong. Now, if they have a relationship with the individual, then maybe they might prorate something because they have a relationship. But they're coming in saying, "Hey, instead of me giving my $5 to this guy over here, I want to give this $5 to my people." You know, and that's kind of the mentality, at least my understanding. And then to answer your question, Vince, this is why unions are put in place, because all the fast food companies, all the, you know, the different companies of different industries, they stick together. So they're able to stand on business and say, hey, no matter who you go to, this is how much gas is now. This is how much candy bars are. No matter if you go to Pepsi or Coke, they have fast food meetings of the minds where all the fast food companies come together and talk. So, like, it wouldn't matter if you go to Burger King or McDonald's. We're all going to stand on business that there's inflation and we're all going to sell at a certain level. So you can't run over to this band or musician over here and say, hey, can you do it for me for this price? So that's where the unions come in. CMAC is going to, even though we're not a union, we're going to offer those same type of benefits and helping the musician and because most musicians are just musicians. They're not business people. They're not, you know, they don't have administrative brains. Not all of them. I'm like, maybe some may, but like, that's being a musician doesn't naturally equate you have administrative or business mind. It just means you're a musician. So this is where the unions come in, where you have some people with administrative minds that may be musicians that help to advocate for the whole community. So that's the beauty of a union. I also wanted to address this. Vince said how someone could be touring with a national artist and people don't want to pay the same money. So let's distinguish. There's a difference between a hired gun or side musician playing with a national artist and an actual artist playing with an artist. So for instance, if I'm in concert at Nighttown or Bop Stop, people will pay, $25, $45, $50, depending on the package, because I'm an artist. But if I wasn't an artist and I just played drums for somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean people are going to pay that because I'm on drums. However, even with me being an artist, you get about 2 shows in the area. Even if you're Beyonce, you might get about 2 shows in Ohio before you have to wait till next year to do any shows in Ohio, because people are not going to keep paying $50 to $100 to come see you in concert. Even if you're Beyonce, you get about 2 shows per state. So like if you're a smaller artist, maybe you can go to different cities and do 2 shows per city per year. But like nobody's going to keep paying, $50 to $75 to see you in concert every week. So when you're talking about somebody that's just gigging at a spot every week and they're like background music, they're setting a vibe, that's not really a concert. And I don't even know if you would do a concert at a club or bar, because you're not going to it's not holding enough people. If you're doing a concert, you want to do an event space or a theater or somewhere where you can get to big numbers and cash out on those 2 performances that you have for the year in that state or that city. So a club situation is a little different than you being in concert. And so I don't know if we could expect, even if people were to pay $50 a ticket, to make the numbers you would if you did a concert at a theater, but nobody's going to pay that every week. So just want to just throw that out there. It's a little different.
Yeah, and I do think that it is an appropriate observation to make, because there is a difference between playing in a group that's making the type of money that a nationally touring group is going to make versus someone doing a show in a bar. But on the other hand, I think it's incumbent upon us as performers, and I'm speaking of local performers, to have a certain level of professionalism in our shows. I'm not expecting you to put
just for clarity, not to cut you off, are you saying a performance? Are you saying a concert? Because I'm saying you get 2 concerts per year, no matter if you're local or national, that people will pay, $35, $50, $75 to see you in concert. You get about 1 or 2 shows per state or per city. If you're national, per state. If you're local, per city. Are you saying a concert, or are you saying just a regular gig performance?
I'm saying a regular gig performance.
Okay.
I'm not talking about a concert. I'm talking about that local band that may not have any professional experience doing tours or even doing concerts. But I think it's incumbent upon us to have a certain level of professionalism in the way we present ourselves to the public. As someone who leads a band, I take the time to put a set list together, to have a flow that is, thoughtful. I take time to look at the keys that songs are played in, to give people sonic variety and not just play a whole bunch of songs that are all in the key of C minor. There's a certain level of thought that goes into doing the performances. They may not be concerts, but they're still performances. And I think the public deserves to receive a certain level of performance or professionalism in the shows that are presented to them, whether it be at a bar, whether they performing in a garage or whatever. And I'll give you an example. You look at a local group, Forecast. I've seen them do performances, and there's a certain level of professionalism that comes in their shows because they take time to rehearse. There are some bands that don't have rehearsals. So basically, when you see them in public, what you're witnessing is a jam session and not something that has been curated to a certain level just to present that professional performance to an audience. I think audiences deserve that. And that's why when we look at the Cleveland musical artist community, these are things that we want to have conversations amongst ourselves with, so that when we come out, we bring a certain level of quality in our association with the organization. That's the point that I'm making. But I receive your point about the difference between a concert and, you know, a local show, because it is relevant.
And also to add to what you just said, and I agree with you about giving excellence, no matter if it's national, local, whether it's you're in concert or whether you're at a coffee shop, to give excellence. I'm in agreement with that. In addition to everything you just said, you remember I was talking about on the corporate level, on the bottom end, we can make 400 to 500. On the top end, we can make, you know, 600 to 900, depending on what you're doing, maybe even more, maybe 15, 25, depending on what you're being hired to do. A lot of those situations, there's no rehearsals. You know, they send you your set list of music. You may not even know who you're performing with. With some agencies, they just pair up different musicians for an event, for a wedding or private party, and you're going to make 400 or 500 on the low end, but there's no rehearsal. They expect you to come in as a professional, know your music, and there's like a cards that they give the client and give the lead, whoever the lead musician will be for that night, and they will ask, was Elijah on time? Was he dressed appropriately? Did he know the music? Did he have good energy? Was he professional? And you get about 2 times the jack up and you're blackballed. Like, they don't call you again. Like, no, they're not going to, you know. But what I'm saying is there's no rehearsals, but, you know, this agency just got 10 grand or more. They paid the hired gun musicians 5 grand among 10 people, 500 each. They got 5 for themselves, so about 10 grand with no rehearsal. So I just wanted to say that there's a lot of gigs or a lot of work opportunities in the musician community where you can make, you know, 5 to 1,500 easily on a regular day with no rehearsals. But they're expecting you just to come in, know your stuff, come in with a good attitude, good energy, professional, dress sharp, on time, you know. And then there's some bands like Horns and Things or Forecast that are like a band, you know, where they're a band, they're doing original music, and they may not walk away with 1,500 a man, but they're coming in with excellence because it's their brand, and they're representing themselves as artists. A lot of bands in the area, they're not artists. They're not viewing themselves even as on that serious level. It's like, we're going to come up with a name that we can put ourselves under to get the gig, but we're not viewing ourselves really that seriously. We're hired guns. We know we're going to get hired gun money because we're not in concert. And, you know, we pretty much been doing these songs forever. So if, you know, this band could go make, you know, 500 to 1,500 a man with no rehearsals, you know, we're not rehearsing. We're not even a band. We don't have any original material. We're not in concert. We're just going to show up and do the songs we all know. We might call some songs off right on the spot. And that's it.
Well, I think what we're talking about is expectations. You know, when that entity gives you a song list, it's assumed that you read music. So if you got the music in front of you and you operate at a certain level of professionalism, it doesn't require the rehearsal because you're playing the music as it's written, you know.
Well, that's true, but these gigs, usually there's no charts. When we're doing the corporate, there's no charts. Like if we're doing theater work, yes. But for a lot of the corporate gigs, it's just you have to do your homework before you get there. And like I said, you get 1 or 2 times, maybe 2 times. They might let you go after 1 time of messing up, but 2 times you're definitely out of there. They're not calling you again.
But again, the expectation is that the level of your professionalism is that if you get this song list, whether there's a rehearsal or not, you're going to know the music. And if you don't know it, you're going to learn the music before you get there, you know. And what I'm saying,
that's not a concert. So we don't have to rehearse because it's not a concert. We just need you to perform at an excellent level, look professional, be on time, have good stage presence. You know, you're performing for the people for their party, or you're performing for this club to get set a certain vibe, and that's it. But of course, if you're in concert, no matter what the money you're getting as a band, you're in concert, of course you're going to rehearse because this is your brand.
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I just, I want to throw this in here before we off live here too. When we was talking again about the payment and our mentality, and the thought came into my mind of us having, as people know, as far as I'm concerned, I stress culture, and I think that's the key to a lot of our issues, is having a common culture or Afrocentric culture that is embedded in us through our genes and heritage and our lineage. So, and I think that's the main problem that is causing a lot of problems in our community and in the African American community. It's the culture. And I can tie that on into what we're talking about right now when we say a breakdown. When our good brother Eli says something about, these ethnic groups come together and they, it seems like their head is on saying, hey, I'm gonna spend this money with and giving this to our local community to empower them and things of that nature. So if we as a people have a culture breakdown to where we're not doing business with one another, we don't respect one another, there's no customatic type of things that we are doing, that we empower ourselves. So I can see that being attached to what we're talking about here. It's a culture breakdown, because if we had the mentality of saying that, hey, I'm spending this money with our people, regardless on what it costs, because I know the purpose and the reasons on why I'm doing this. Just like I would pass 10 businesses in order to shop at another African American business, and I don't even care if I'm paying even more money. That's the mindsets that we have to have as people. So as Brother Eli was saying, those people that is willing to pay top dollar to their people like that, they're culturally linked, and they passing that money around to themselves. And I believe that why we having issues and struggling with it, because we have a cultural breakdown in our community.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain economic reality, because when you look at the categories of dysfunction, we lead all of them. And as a result of that, I think we might be a bit more conscious, even though we might want to support that Black business. Reality is we're going to go to Walmart because we know we get the cheapest price. And, we got to stretch every dollar that we get. What you're speaking of reflects a certain level of cultural consciousness. And I think, one of the issues that we have as a people is that in many cases we lack cultural consciousness.
For sure.
Because we're trapped in a survival mentality. And I know we've talked about, some of the issues that we have in our musical community and in the community in general as it relates to music. But in the next hour, I would like to talk about the benefit of music to our community, because, we're looking at what was brought up earlier today about racism as a public health crisis. And it's not always about the problem, it's about solutions. And I think when we embrace the idea of cultural consciousness, for instance, when we embrace the idea of what music does to our brains, what it does to us spiritually, what it does to us physically, I think we have to raise the level of awareness about that. And Elijah Gilmore is someone who has an awareness of those things. And I definitely want him to be able to share his perspective on the healing power of music, because it's a very real thing. As I see it, the music provides a benefit to the listener, but it also provides a benefit to the musician, because the musician is in a position to get the same healing when they play that instrument, and everything is in harmony, and all of the members of the band are on one page, and they're presenting this fantastic, performance to a community or to an audience. speaking as a musician, it makes me feel good. You know, it validates my connection to the creator, and even above and beyond that, to present something to an audience that I created, you know, that I'm not just regurgitating something that somebody else did, but I'm giving something original to an audience and to witness their enjoyment. I mean, that's one of the most rewarding things that happens for us as musicians as we ply our craft, so to speak. So want to talk about some of those things before we make our paradigm shift to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I just want to remind everybody that there are folks that are watching us online in addition to being on the radio, and we appreciate your presence on our broadcast. We invite you to join us on the chat and present some of your comments. I know there's somebody named Kim at 3.0. I'm really interested because of the things that you have said in the chat to know who you actually are, because Kim at 3.0 probably is not your government name, but in light of the accomplishments, I would hope that you would identify yourself so we have a perspective on who you are. We have two separate YouTube channels. We have The Journey with Antonio, so you can go to The Journey with Antonio and support him on that particular YouTube channel. And of course, there is Vince Robinson. I'm on YouTube as well. And we get a benefit from your engagement. So, you know, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get your opportunity to support our various platforms. I will reiterate one more time that we are going to have a live performance by the brother that you're seeing on the screen right now, Elijah Gilmore, as he supports Kim Essence Hunt Edge in her performance of poetry and percussion. Show starts at 7 o'clock tonight, and it is also a solo exhibition for her. So there will be artwork that is available for sale, and you can make an investment in that. Before we leave the radio platform, Elijah, is there any social media information that you would like to convey with the audience?
Yes. And before doing that, if it's okay, I just want to touch on what Mr. Antonio said.
We have 2 minutes, brother. We got 2 minutes.
Gotcha.
So we have to get to it on the side.
I believe that we can get back to that place mentally, because we were the original people who taught everyone how to be a family, community, and society. So it's not about if we can get there or if we can operate in that way. I believe that we can, and that's the good thing. So I just wanted to end on that good note. If you want to follow me, I'm on YouTube. You can follow me at Tribe of Eli on YouTube. On Instagram, you can follow me as Elijah G Beats. On Facebook, you can follow me as Elijah Gilmore.
All right. So there you have it. We've got less than a minute left, Brother Antonio. Anything you want to share before we make the transition?
Yeah, just basically understanding that it's all about energy. Everything is about energy. And once you understand that, I think it would open up a lot of eyes and open up your consciousness and understanding your environment and how it affects you. So once you understand energy is the key to this whole thing called life. And that's what music brings. It's about energy.
Absolutely.
And I think Brother Elijah will also say that it's all about frequency and vibration. And we'll have that conversation as well. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to 360 Info Network. Don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channels. Big ups to Tone Harley, our engineer back at the station. He makes it possible for us to do this each and every week. And thanks to the Cleveland Observer for being the title sponsor. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make a great day. Peace.
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 All right. It is 12 o'clock noon here in Cleveland, Ohio, Eastern Standard Time. You know, you can see us all over the world because we have this digital television platform. So it makes it possible for us to bring on guests who are on other sides of the planet, as well as to share this information with folks who are all over the world. So we're really grateful to have this platform. Today, our guest is Elijah Gilmore. He is the founder of the Tribe of Eli. He is also president of Cleveland Musical Artists Community, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about that and the realities of performing in Cleveland and what the audiences deal with and what we deal with as musicians in terms of pay and so forth and so on. But I'd like to shift gears and just talk about the benefit of music. Elijah, it's no secret that, you know, we are partners as musicians in this town, and we've had conversations, and you've shared with me certain things about the benefit of music to people who engage in the process, the benefit to their brain activity. So if you'd like to elaborate on that, I would definitely appreciate it.
Okay. So as you've already said, music has so many different benefits. We can start with what music does for our brains. Music is one of the few activities that we can uh, experience our whole brain being activated. So like if they were to put our brain on an x-ray and you and I would give each other a hug, a part of the brain would light up. Or if Brother Hamptonio and I were going out to eat and we were to eat, a certain part of the brain would light up. But when we listen to music, the entire brain lights up. That's the only thing that we know that does this. And if we actually were to sing along to the music we're listening to, or to clap our hands or dance, the brain lights up even more like a Christmas tree. And this is a relatively new study or science. And so now we're using music and neurology to try to understand the brain better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Music also. Oh, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Of course, we know music is great for bringing us all together. You know, you can go to a Michael Jackson concert and everybody from every walk of life can get along with each other for that hour, 2 hours of the concert. You know, music is good for therapy, whether you need to relax yourself because you're having anxiety and you put on some slow legato music that can calm your spirit, or whether you're in a slump and you got to put on something with an upbeat so that you can get energy, get energized. You know, when people go to war, they have the upbeat so you can get energized. So we know that music is great for those type of things too. They're really getting serious with the study of music now. They're getting into stuff like binaural beats and the different frequencies that will help you to either go to sleep or to focus. You know, it's really interesting to me because, you know, we just thought of music just from a standpoint of like entertainment, dancing, you know, or, you know, that's my song, but we didn't understand some of the benefits to our health, whether mentally or biologically speaking. And now the generation that we, or the modern world that we live in now, health and wellness is a big thing, and music is a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, to add to what you're saying, I recall seeing a few different videos where there was someone who was suffering from dementia, and they would share music with them. And in that moment, they actually came to life. You know, the music had such a tremendous impact on them. And for whatever reason, it kind of took them back. So they were able to remember things that happened a long time ago versus, you know, having a deficit in terms of remembering something from 5 minutes ago. So
Absolutely.
there's definitely a benefit to music. And as you spoke of the binaural beats and you know, I think about the solfeggio frequencies and, you know, use them in my own personal life. I actually have a frequency generator. And this frequency generator enables me to program it to a specific tone because different tones provide different benefits. So if, for instance, if you look at 528 hertz, the 528 hertz, it kind of programs you into an idea of having love for everyone. You know, it's like that, but it's also something that provides healing to your body. You know, you look at 174, same thing. You know, if you have inflammation in your body, you can program this frequency generator to 174 hertz. And then the impact that frequency or that vibration has is that it fosters a certain level of anti-inflammatory activity in your body. There was a person by the name of Dr. Royal Rife who did a lot of research on that. And he was one of the folks that kind of brought this idea of frequency as a healing modality to the world. So now you see different versions of products that will give you these healing frequencies, and people are implementing them as a way of dealing with their physical health. But, you know, there's also the mental and spiritual health, because we know that there is a benefit that comes from meditation. So when you meditate on a regular basis, you know, it allows you to vibrate at a certain frequency, and it allows you to create and manifest and do all kinds of things just because you are connected to the light that is within you, as opposed to being distracted by the things that are happening out there in the world that keep you in existence in a lower vibrational state.
Absolutely. I would like to jump in there. You got me a little excited, if it's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, we were at Cleveland Clinic. My band was playing at Cleveland Clinic, and I don't even remember what we were playing. We could have been freestyling. They had wrote this lady down who had been in a veggie state all year, like not able to move or speak. And after listening to us, she got out of her wheelchair, started dancing, smiling. The doctors started crying, and we started crying. And they said, we know the power of music, but it still gets us every time. And just picture grandma at church, you know, hearing, you know, the music and getting out of her wheelchair and start running around the church. And you're like, whoa, grandma hasn't moved all year, you know. So music is very, very, very powerful. I want to tell another story. I do wellness drum circles. And this guy had came in. He said he was having struggles with his, I guess, with walking. And after doing our wellness drum circle, he was like, I don't know what happened, but I can walk. I feel good. And I had to put it on video. I had to record it just so people can see, you know, because one thing for you to say it, but for somebody to actually say, yeah, I don't know what happened to my leg, but I'm better now. And, you know, in the hospitals, they know because they use drumming for physical therapy in the hospitals. You know, they bring out percussion instruments and it helps you to get your motors going again. So you're absolutely right, Vince. We don't have the awareness of just how beneficial music is in our lives. We just say, oh, that's my song. But, you know, music can even affect your mentality of how you experience life. You know, if you're listening to music that has a low vibration of lyrics, for instance, you know, you may not go about life in the most healthiest way. Or if you're listening to a song that's inspirational and the lyrics are uplifting and high vibrational lyrics are going to allow you to experience life in a different way. So it affects us biologically, and it also affects us mentally, or what some may say spiritually.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because music is energy.
Right. I want to get back to what you're expressing, but I know that Hamtonio wants to express something. So Hamtonio, and then I'll follow.
Yes, I mean, and let's take it another step. Music can be used as a weapon against a group of people. You see, why does people, you know, as far as that industry is concerned, now do you understand why they want to control that industry? When Brother Eli, when you was talking about motivation and causing you to do this, and the drum beats and the warrior beats and things of that nature, that's why they want to control the music and what's being put out here to the people. That's why they snuffed out positive rap music because it can motivate the people to do something. So music is a weapon. This is all about control. We talked about the 44 hertz platform versus the four is it 28 or 38, I believe. I can't.
It's 440 versus 432.
32. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so why? What's going on? So there's things in the background that are manipulating people, and we're unaware of that. So when Vince has that little frequency generator there, or if you understand those particular things, see, and taking it even a little further, frequency and energy has to do with colors, smells, all of that plays a part in controlling and dealing with your psychic and how you feel and think and things of that nature. The things you see visually. That's how deep spirituality is. That's how complex the body is, and those things. We might just look at it as trivial and don't have anything to do. But see, we all have that before and been in church, and your hair stood up on the back of your neck and things like that. But our ancestors understood that when they did with violins and pianos and things like that, they knew it was a healing process. And that's what motivated people. And that's where we get that whole church jumping up and down and moving around. They did that in the village. They do it in the village today. But that's healing taking place. That's the spirit taking place. So if you got a group of people who know that's been practicing mind control and things like that for the longest, and they understand that, they know that they can manipulate music in order to pacify or calm down the people or control the people in a certain kind of way. And these are some of the sciences that we need to know. That's why I say energy, frequency, all that is all about that. And once you understand that, you can do better and can control in your life.
Absolutely. Well, you said it earlier. You said everything is energy, and that's true. Even our words are energy. You can cast spells. Absolutely. From the words that even if you want to, for those who may be Christian, if we want to put a little Bible on it, life and death is in the power of the tongue, and so if a man thinketh, and we don't realize how powerful our thoughts and words are. It's all energy. Mm-hmm. It's all energy. So Vince and I was talking about this. In church, we say faith. In the streets, we may say, law of attraction. And in the science world, we say quantum physics. In church, we say, I like your spirit. In the street, we say, I like your vibes. And in science, we say you have good energy. It's all the same, Mm-hmm. So, and once you, like you said, and as Vince said, once we are aware and understand how energy operates, then you start seeing that everything affects you from, like you said, from colors to words to music. It's all energy, vibration, and frequency.
Okay, so if I could, I want to rewind to follow the comments that you made before Brother Hamtonio expressed what he expressed. And we can start with the biblical reference that you made. God said, let there be light, and there was light. Think about it. God said, and it was a power of words. It was a power of sound that created light. If you look at it again from the biblical perspective. You just mentioned a few moments ago, spelling, casting spells. Again, it's the power of sound with the words that you utter from your mouth. And one of the things that I've been extremely mindful of is what we say, the words that we speak, the thoughts that we think. And you talked about, and what Antonio said about how music is used against us. That's exactly what I wanted to express before he expressed it. When we go into stores, there might be background music playing, and there's subliminal messages being fed to us in that music, in that sound. So you may not be consciously aware of what you're hearing, but they're feeding you messages that are telling you not to shoplift. They're feeding you messages that are encouraging you to buy something. This is one of the ways sound is used against us. Brother Hamtonio brought up the 440 versus the 432 piece. And again, they have an understanding of how we're affected by those frequencies, so they employ those frequencies against us. And that's why it's so important for us to have an understanding of those frequencies so that we can use them to our benefit instead of to our detriment. Brother Antonio made another great point about how positive rap music got pushed out of the space and it was replaced by gangster rap, and all that other kind of stuff. You had artists like KRS-One, and even later down the line, you had Mos Def and Talib Kweli and others, Common and others who were giving you something of substance. But where we are right now is a music industry that understands the power of music and is giving us music that is not detrimental. And what they do when they do this is they create these loops. And so we're not aware of those loops. And those loops keep us trapped because of the way music is used against us. So once again, it means that we have to have an awareness of this and we have to work against it. One of the things that I really appreciate about live musical performances by local musicians, particularly those who give you their own music and not the music that is just, everybody liked this song, so we're going to play this song. But when they come to you with original music and it's thoughtful music and it reflects a certain level of consciousness, then we have an opportunity to use music in a positive way outside of the paradigm of manipulation and oppression, because those things are very real. They're extremely real. I'm going to share, and I'll turn the mic over, so to speak, Elijah, because I know you have something significant to share. I went to a film this past week called Begonia. And it was at the Great Northern Theaters. They have a theater complex there. And when you go into this movie theater, they have you sitting above the floor. So when you sit in the seat, it extends so that you can raise the level of your legs, but your feet aren't touching the floor. And the whole point of this theatrical experience is that you don't just hear the sound, you feel the sound. So as you're watching this film, they have you vibrating in certain ways. And you know how they use music in films to bring you to a climax or to create tension, all those things that film scores are all about. They create this sonic experience that has an impact on you. Now, I have to tell you about this film because Begonia was about this guy who was a beekeeper and his cousin who I believe was autistic. And the beekeeper has a mother who has been negatively affected by chemicals that are created by this corporation that affects the quality of life of bees. So because of her experience, he's motivated to get back at this company and specifically get back at the CEO because the CEO was responsible for the entire company. Now, the CEO is a woman, and this beekeeper, because he's operating on a certain level of consciousness, determines that she is an alien. And at the time of the lunar eclipse, there's going to be an opportunity for her to connect with a spaceship. And I apologize because I'm going to give away the ending of this movie. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it. And so those of you who are watching, You can
Turn the volume down.
turn the volume down if you don't want to hear it. But the way the story goes, he kidnaps her. He and the cousin kidnap her. They bring her to the house. They have her held captive in the basement. They got her ankles chained to the floor. As they were kidnapping her, they shaved her head because her hair was the way that the entities in the spaceship could track her. So they shaved her head and then they slathered her with this substance. I think it was an antihistamine to do the same thing to prevent them from making that connection. And the whole time you're watching this film, you think, oh, these dudes are crazy because, you know, she's just the CEO of this company and she couldn't possibly be an alien. But the beekeeper dude, he was deep than a mug. I just put it in those terms because he had an understanding. Now, at a certain point in the conversation between this woman and the beekeeper, she says, oh, you're just going down this conspiratorial theory pipeline and you've been influenced by the things that you've seen on social media, blah, 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 right? Well, here's the giveaway to the ending. It turns out that she was an alien. It turns out that that spaceship was real. And what happens in the course of the film is that this alien influences him to go to where his mother is in a coma. And she told him that the solution to bringing her out of the coma was this something that she had in the trunk of her car. And it turned out to just be antifreeze. But he told her that this solution would save her life. Well, he gets on his bicycle. He rides out to the place where she is. He puts the antifreeze in her IV and it kills her. He gets back on his bicycle. And by the time he gets back to his bicycle, this woman has escaped from the chains and everything. The cousin has blown his own brains out. And it's a confrontation between the two of them. He realized that she was who she said she was. And he convinced her to take him to the headquarters so that he could get beamed up to the spaceship. So he gets in the closet. She's got a calculator that she's putting these numbers into, and it could have beamed him up to the spaceship, but he had this stuff strapped on as protection. And he ends up blowing his brains out. And then after that, security comes in. They rescue her because he blew her knee out, you know, because he was punishing her. They put her in an ambulance and they're driving away from the place. They got oxygen on her and she says, hey, wait a minute. She takes the mask off. She gets out of the ambulance. She hobbles back to the headquarters. She goes into the same closet and she gets beamed up to the spaceship. She gets up there and it's like this council of aliens, and there were black faces in them. They had different bodies, but the ending of the movie is that she goes over to this bubble. She pops the bubble and all the humans on Earth are dead. So they show you all these people, and the cats and the dogs are still alive, but all the people are dead. They showed you somebody that was having sex and they butt naked on the bed, dead, laying on each other. They showed you people at their places of employment laying out on the ground, hunched over their tables. Everybody is dead, you know, and you go through this experience being held hostage as she was held hostage. And the whole time they've got sound influencing you. So not only are they giving you this sonic experience, they're giving you, if you're familiar with predictive programming, they're giving you a certain level of perspective on what's really going on. So I apologize for giving you the plot of the movie and the ending of it, but I just wanted to share with you as I was sitting there watching this, I was absolutely stunned and people just got up out of their seats and they walked out of the theater like they just watched a cartoon. And I'm like,
Do
did
you
you
realize?
right? Did you really see what just
Definitely,
happened? You know,
definitely. They definitely use media, from movies to commercials to subconsciously influence us. And I don't think the idea of aliens is unrealistic as well, since it's life on planet Earth. It wouldn't be far-fetched to think there could be life on other planets. Um, but yeah, I agree with you that they use media to, drop subliminal messages in our minds and everything. That's just like with music, like brother Antonio said. One thing I wanted to touch on that you said earlier, you were talking about the loops, and loops is very similar to chants or similar to a beat, that it's repetitive, and that the more it keeps repeating itself, it's stronger. Almost like when you're meditating and you hear that one note on a singing bowl, and the longer you marinate in that note, or you marinate in that chant, the stronger the energy of that becomes. So yeah, that just breaking down the science of when you talked about loops. Yeah.
yeah. And so Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Buddhist, that has meaning to you. And I've
Yeah.
listened to people who are chanting, and I've actually chanted with them, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And then they create a certain vibration with
Mm-hmm.
those words. And then, we've been online where we've talked about, I think Brother Wayne Chandler has brought this to us, how you could have all these monks in one location chanting at the same time. And even though there are a very small portion of the population of the world, them being engaged in that chant can actually have an impact on the entire globe. So again, as you're saying, there's power in those loops, but those loops can be used for positive reasons,
Sure.
and they can be used for negative reasons. And the loops that I was talking about are the ones that are used for negative reasons, and they are present in the music. So you listen to somebody like Jay-Z. Well, Jay-Z will take you into a place of darkness. There are other artists, same thing, and you look at the impact that the music has on you. I've got playlists, Elijah, on Spotify. And when I'm working out, I'll put on some hardcore gangster rap, right? Because it's getting you,
Some war music.
getting you hyped up,
Yeah.
and you pushing the weight, and but
Yeah.
I had to think about it, man. I had to think, what am I listening to? What am I allowing to circulate in my headspace? And it's like, that's okay. I listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
September, Boogie
Mm-hmm.
Wonderland, something like that, something that I know came from somebody who had a certain level of spiritual enlightenment versus me listening to MC8 or, Ice Cube or, West Side Connection.
Nah. I'm gonna say this, and I'm with you on that. I'm with you
Yeah.
on that. The thing that has so much appeal that sometimes you say, man, they ain't talking about nothing, but damn, that beat fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the power of music. Is they ain't talking about nothing, but that music, even if it's just a chanting loop, it's so fire. You like, he ain't talking about nothing, but I need to hear that. That's the power. That's the power. Go ahead. Look like you're going to
See, we like I said, it's all about, again, being knowledgeable about energy, frequency, vibrations, and things like that. And we can't be naive. We, especially the African American community, I speak on that because we've been, behind the 8 ball for so long. So that's my concerns. But if the system has gone so far as to want to control your food, where they putting excitotoxins in it and getting your body to respond in a certain kind of way. You know what I mean? And then we must understand that they understand how images affect the brain. You know, things that you see and your eyes interpret in your brain. You know, I wanted at one time to start an image campaign because we know what the images that they're putting out in our community, but we're not counteracting those images. Images evoke emotions, which evoke actions. So images is very important. So we can't be naive not to know that they've been studying this stuff for a long time. You know, manipulating those particular things, you know, and controlling those particular things. So they know that certain frequencies affect certain organs in your body. Certain organs in your body respond to the different levels and the different hurts and things of that nature. And you just be on fire, like you just said. You're hitting that. And the great thing about it, our ancestors understood that. That's why I talk about doing the Sankofa, going back to retrieve what you left behind. If our people been on the planet forever, they have worked through these social issues. They have worked through these cosmic issues. If they understand that a great year is 26,000 years, that means they must have seen it happen more than once to know that it's a repetitive situation going on. So I'm saying that to talk about the longevity and working out social issues, working out community issues. They have done that. They've been through all that. And if we just revert back to what our ancestors are saying, when you're going to try me, we will understand those things, and we would stop being manipulated so much by the system and by the people who've been doing this for a long time, remote viewing and all that. They've been doing it.
So Mr. Antonio,
go
ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
That's going to require us to be responsible artists. That's going to require us to take accountability as the leaders of our community, us as African American men, to take accountability and lead our community. That's what that's going to take, because we can do it. Because we taught everyone how to be a family and community and civilization. We were the first family, community, and civilization. And when we talk about the struggles that African Americans have, we're talking about the descendants of the slaves from America who are trying to play catch up with learning how to be a family, community, and civilization. And to our credit, there were several towns that we've built that were burnt down or bombs were dropped on when we try to, raise ourselves up to a civilized standard. So there's that too. But the whole point is, I agree with you. I agree with Vince. We have to be responsible artists. We have to be, we as the African American leaders or men of our community we have to point the first finger at ourselves for where we want our communities to be. And I can see why a lot of us might feel hopeless, that if every time we built up a city or a town, it was burnt down or bombs dropped on it, or when we got leaders, there were bullets put in their heads. I can see how we could just feel like, all right, we don't want to go too high because I don't want a bullet in our head. I don't want bombs dropped on us or our city burnt down. So we're just going to operate in a safe space and in a place of sort of hopelessness, I guess, if that's the word. But the good thing that I like about the times we're living in now is that we're living in the internet age, and we're able to see that there's so many people who are not racist, who want to see us be able to operate as one human family. And I heard Vince say this: it's not enough to just talk about the issues, but to come up with solutions.
Yeah. So if I could expand what you just shared about us being descended from slaves, I think also mentioned the fact that we were the original family. I think you talked about that.
But
And
the
we
slaves
were,
they split the mom and dad up on different plantations. So
yeah,
we didn't have
let me make this point. As the original family, we were all over the planet.
absolutely.
Okay, so when you look at the work of Dr. Rashidi, when you look at the work of Wayne Chandler, when you look at the work of Dr. Ivan Van Sertima and others who asserted the African global presence, it wasn't just that we were descended from those who were brought over on the slave ships. Those who were already here were also part of that entire paradigm. So I just want to
Absolutely.
make sure that we
Are you talking
include,
about the indigenous Indians?
I'm not talking about Indians. I'm talking about Africans all over the planet. We
Weren't the
can
indigenous Indians African?
we can include them in this
Yeah,
conversation.
Mhm.
Okay, but I'm just talking about the African global presence, not just being relegated to us who are brought over. I think
Absolutely.
it's I think it's important to point out that those of us who were brought over, those of us who were descended from them, are the strongest of the strong because of the experience that we had. And I also wanted to allude to the significance of the narrative, because sometimes, we talk about the fact that our cities were destroyed, but we never talk about the fact that we rebuilt them. And the rebuilding of those things not being known puts us in that place of hopelessness. When you look at what's going on this planet right now, there are people in various places who are doing things to have a positive impact on where they are. And a lot of times, because we just get so caught up in the negativity that's shared with us on a perpetual basis, we don't hear about those things. We don't recognize those things. Somebody sent me a video the other day of a school that's somewhere in the northeast part of the country where these young people are using technology to create things. They don't just have 3D printers, they have bamboo printers. And the brother who was facilitating this was asking for support, but we don't think of young people being those kinds of creators. So it's important for us to know that, there's a young man who figured out how to make plastic into fuel to power vehicles. There are people on the continent of Africa who have figured out how to make vehicles that never require refueling. But when you listen to a popular narrative, you would never think that we had the level of intelligence that would allow us to create those things. So all I'm saying is that, again, when you talk about the power of words, when you talk about the power of thought, these are the things that we should have an awareness of, so that we don't exist in this paradigm of hopelessness that is being created for us. Because the reality is, the people who control the media want us to live in a state of fear. We kind of alluded to it earlier, but I wanted to make the point. You talked about the impact that these vibrations have on our organs. Well, our kidneys are the seat of our fear. And when you come to our communities, you don't have to travel far before you see a dialysis center. And who's in these dialysis centers? We are. Okay, so this just demonstrates how they're using sound, how they're using frequencies to disaffect us rather than to improve the quality of our health, because again, they keep us trapped in a survival mentality that prevents us from thinking logically, critically, analytically, to a point where we realize that, hey, I've got something negative happening in my body, but I can use sound as a remedy. I have something negative happening in my mind, but I can use sound as a remedy. So it's really about us connecting with our awareness of who and what we are. And that's when it brings us to the idea of our divinity. Elijah and Brother Antonio, I want to bring us to an understanding of the divinity that lives within us, that empowers us to confront the things that affect us in a negative way. Because when you talk about this whole idea of creating, and you realize that we talk about the creator, and we use it in terms of a big C creator. We talk about that supreme intelligence that created everything that we have an awareness of, and even more significantly, the things that we don't have an awareness of. And what I'm sharing is that we are an extension of that creator. That's what allowed someone to create that drum that's a part of your repertoire. And so I'm just thinking about the drum circle that you have on the fourth Sunday of the month that I can't come to because I'm performing at Rudy's. But I'm thinking about the power that happens in that drum circle as everybody is putting their hands on that drum, creating that vibration, existing in that place of unity that allows someone's leg to be healed. You know, again, coming back to the power of sound. Go ahead, Elijah.
I'm in agreement with everything you said. It's our responsibility to be more proactive in teaching our community about who we are in history, what we did in history. We cannot expect for anybody to teach our history and what we're doing and what we've done outside of ourselves. So I'm in agreement with you. We have to be more proactive with that. For instance, I heard you talk about the young children, and I had to look this up while you were speaking so I can say her name correctly. Alana George. She's a young child. She's like 12 or 14 or something like that. Now, as of recently, I won't mention any names, but there was a political figure that said that Black women were not capable of this or that, and I'm not going to give any more energy to that. But Alana George is a Black girl, and she's a part of Mensa. That's one of the smartest organizations you can be a part of. And not only is she part of Mensa, she is the smartest in Mensa. At 12 or 14, with a bunch of adults that are a part of Mensa, she's the smartest as a child. You know, and these are the type of things that we need to be teaching, and not wait for people to teach, you know, us who we are. And I believe in us learning more about who we are and our potential, that we can be not only better contributors to society, but also have hope and say, hey, we can figure this out. We can figure out how we can be one human family, because we have the same minds that invented the pyramids, that they're trying to figure out how we built that. You know, we have the same minds as Alana George, you know, but we don't believe that we've lost hope because of all the narratives that have been painted to us about who we are and what we can't do. So I agree with you, Vince, and Mr. Antonio, that we definitely have to be more proactive in putting the right type of energy out here to our communities. And actually, we're one human family. I want to say this too real quick. You don't get the snow leopard without the leopard. You don't get the leopard without the Black Panther. Now, the snow leopard wants to beat his chest and say he's the latest evolution of leopard. And the Black Panther beats their chest and say we're the original, and maybe the leopard on the Savannah Plains that we know of the most, the gold one with black spots, he may say he's the most popular, but they're all leopards. We're all one human family. Everybody has African in their DNA, including Europeans. We're one human family. We have to learn how to operate as one human family, or we will inevitably self-destruct at some point. Everybody will push their bombs and that'll be it. So we have to learn how to operate as one. There's just the human family, just Earth. There's not China and America. It's just planet Earth. And we don't need attack from aliens to come together as a human family, but we will need to exercise some emotional intelligence. We will have to do some critical thinking. We may have to tap into some technology. I think the arts will also help lead the way. But I understand when people say, well, we need to get ourselves together first so that we can have a seat at the table and have conversations. I'm in agreement with that as well. But just people need to know we're all one human family. And, genius is not in a color, it's not in a gender. Genius is genius. And I'm so in agreement with both of you saying about us being proactive and putting the right vibrations and frequencies out here, monitoring what type of music we listen to, and also just being more responsible artists ourselves to make sure that we're putting the type of music out that's going to heal and uplift our communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a quick question. Let me ask both of you guys a question. How does it affect your psychic, or how do you feel when the majority part of your life you're not being represented? You're not being represented. All the heroes, all the folks who saved the day, all the the folks who so smart, all the folks who's living well and things like that. How does that affect an individual? If they have to deal with that, would it put them in that back seat, in that complacency that you was talking about, Mr. Eli? Do it make you feel that way? Because we're wondering why we're not expressing ourselves or not motivated to do some of those things. Now, I think as a community, the things that we're talking about here, if we really want to make an impact on some things, is what we're talking about. Setting up schools of science like that teach you that cells have memory. Talking about the DNA and how it affects you, and that you're still tied to your ancestors, and you still got that genius cell that is inside of you, or how your name within itself, or how it sounds, the audio that comes out of your mouth, how it affects you and affect the body. I think if our young minds start learning that particular thing, that particular stuff at an early age, God knows when they get to the point of the level of being able to create some stuff with knowing those type of sciences behind it, God knows what they could create. We got geniuses just sitting on it haven't been activated, that they don't know. They don't know these things are being played against them to control them and things like that. So that's what we should be doing. We're going to make some serious impact and turn around.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I wanted to say something to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I got some good news for us. We live in the internet age. That was the game changer. Because information can be shared among the entire world through the internet. So initially, America being more of a racist country, they're going to show you the white Indian, the white successful Indian, the white successful Mayan, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Asian, even though we know there's very dark versions of all of those. There's very dark Mayans, very dark Indians, very dark Puerto Ricans, and they're not going to show you the dark Asians and Mexicans. But because of the internet, that's a game changer right now. So now we have the internet is one of the top platforms to teach or to reach the masses outside of even over radio and television. And I also want to say this, in me touring across seas a lot, I got a chance to experience Europe. And I figured out that this is an American thing. Europe is not racist like we are in America. I would go in their malls and see black mannequins with afros. They got black billboards, black commercials. Like, it wasn't, I'm like, where am I? And now I understand when
people left.
People like Baldwin and people would go across there and not want to come home, or would just stay over there like Nina Simone, because
Tina Turner.
Racism is not a thing over there. Like that when we got over there, they would say we hate what's happening to African Americans in America. That's what they would say when we get off the planes in Europe, because they can see what's happening through the internet to us. And it just wasn't a thing. Even their food, they don't put all the chemicals and preservatives in their food like we do. So America is more racist and capitalist driven. And so I want to say there's hope. I want to say that there's hope. Everybody It's not the same. And like I said, that game changer is the internet. So any information we want to put out here that can help strengthen our human family, and then strengthen our human family, especially with emotional intelligence and awareness, it's going to help with issues like racism, sexism, and all the different things that divide us. Because in coming into emotional intelligence, we have to have awareness of, why do I feel the way I feel? Is there a healthier way to deal with this? You know, go ahead, Vince. You look like you was going to say something.
Well, I have to agree and disagree. And I'll tell you why I disagree. But I just want to go back to something that you brought up earlier. And you talked about how they're dark Puerto Ricans, dark Mayans, you know, all that's the evidence of the African global presence, because those people evolved from us. Now, when you talk about this human family, there are similarities, but there are differences. And these are things that have been quantified by scientists when it comes to genetics. You know, there are certain markers that we have in terms of our genealogy that give us more than others have. So when you talk about the evolution of Europeans, well, the evolution of Europeans, you know, demonstrates that they evolved from us. So there are some genetic differences that I think that we have to consider, which is not to say superiority or anything like that. It's just a fact. You know, it's science. You know,
yeah,
and
there's differences between men and women. You know,
yeah, it's science. But let me continue. When you talk about racism, the experiences that drove Nina and Tina and others to go to Europe, where they were treated differently, you know, but at the same time, you take a country like France and you see the level of racism that exists in that country. You go to Ukraine and you see how, you know, Africans who were living in Ukraine were treated when that skirmish broke out, you know. So I don't think that it's necessarily accurate to say that the racism isn't there, because it's there. It's just experienced in a different way. Okay. You know, when you look at what the Moors did for the Europeans, the Europeans weren't bathing. They didn't know soap. They didn't know toothbrush. They didn't know cleanliness. And it took the Moors to bring that to them. And then you had the conquistadors who went over to Central America, and it was the same thing. They got there and they had elaborate sewage systems. But those
I know racism is everywhere. Like,
let me finish, Elijah. Let me finish. Let me finish. They came to those places in the world and they found that they got an education from us. But I just think that it's important to reflect on the historical facts, you know. And so when you look at the continent of Africa and you look at the impact of the Berlin Conference, and you looked at the fact that these European countries came together and divided the continent and created these different boundaries and all the things that they did to try to interrupt our continuity as families and nations within this great continent, you see the evidence of the racism that is still being perpetuated to this day, and the impact of colonialism on the continent of Africa that affects both sides of the globe. So you got Africans who are living in a colonialist mind state that does not allow them access to the full history and the full narrative. Okay. And then you come across the country, or come across the ocean to here, and you see how we've been disaffected by the narrative that they've given us. But to your point about the internet, I fully agree, because what's happening now is that the narratives are being changed by the fact that we're understanding these historical events that happen. I saw a video earlier this week where there were these brothers who had petroleum companies here in America. And the petroleum producers, and I have to go to Rockefeller and the others, they came in and destroyed their petroleum empires, just completely destroyed them. When I pick up my history book as a 17-year-old student, I don't see that in the book. And when I get to college, I don't get that either. But to know that we were subjected to those kinds of things the same kinds of things that resulted in Black Wall Street, Greenwood being destroyed, Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and all the other places that are under lakes right now because they wanted to destroy us. These are the things that they don't share with us because they don't want us to understand the lengths that they have gone through to suppress our greatness. But these things are bubbling up to the surface, and now we're getting a greater awareness of who and what we are, because we are divine beings with the ability to create the things that can make our lives better when we vibrate on that frequency, on those levels that allow us to attain connection to that divinity so that we can solve the problems that we're confronted with. So I
agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. And I think two things can be true. I think that we have to educate our community on our greatness and also educate our community on things that have been done to us undercover. In addition, I guess I was just saying that there are people on the planet who have white complexion, or what we call white, who are not racist and who want to see our world advance. And so I know there's going to be theft everywhere in the world. It may be higher in certain places. I was just kind of shocked at how it wasn't so much of a thing in Europe, but I still know that it's still there, you know.
Yeah.
And they stopped slavery before America did, you know.
And I don't want to discount the fact that we are one family, and I don't want to discount the fact that we have allies within the other population, if I can characterize it as that are compassionate, concerned, loving, and part of our community,
and gave up their lives.
Yeah, and you know that the whole strategy has been to divide us. That's why, you know, LBJ said, if you can convince the white man, the poorest white man, and these aren't his exact words, but basically what he was saying was, if you can convince the poorest white man that he's better than a black person, you know the rest of the story, you know. So, but when you look at what's going on right now, you know, somebody talked about the president, you know, taking the SNAP benefits off the table. Well, it's affecting them more than it's affecting us because there's more of them on it than us, you know. So, but the thing about it is they create these lines of division to keep us fighting against each other. But what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a certain unification, because we all understand that we're fighting against the same evil, no matter what the complexion of our skin is. And it's that unity that disrupts the plans of the elites who want to put us adverse to each other. And so they can keep us from fighting against them because they got us fighting against each other. We have to lock arms and unite against the oppression that oppresses everybody. When you look at what's happening with currency, they're debasing the currency. When they debase the currency, what happens? Inflation kicks in. When inflation kicks in, it costs you more to purchase something than you purchased the day before. And the whole time they are transferring wealth from us to them. This is a game that they're playing with currency, because they want you to have this mindset of lack. They want you to have this mindset that you never have enough. You know, you're struggling to pay the rent. You're struggling to pay your car note. You're struggling to pay the utilities. You have to make a decision between buying the medication and buying something to eat. And the something that you eat is causing you to have to use the medication, but they keep you in darkness about that whole paradigm, you know. So the answer to all of this is knowledge. The answer to all of this is information. The answer to all of this is consciousness, so that we can make the choice that will allow us to understand we live in a universe of abundance. Everybody's needs can be met when the resources are used in a certain way. This is to Antonio's point, this is the way of the African. This is the way that the village takes care of itself. This is the way that people cooperate with each other so that they don't have to go without. Because we have land, we can cultivate enough food in Africa to feed the planet. If you look at what's happening in Africa, the resources that power this globe, the coltan, the cobalt, all the gold, all the things that they're taking out of the earth,
Diamond.
it's all there, and we can't look at it as an us and them. We have to look at it as a cooperative situation. We have the benefit of education here in the United States, and we can go over to Africa and take what we know about education to enhance the educational experience of those young people. There are students in Africa who didn't know anything about Afrocentricity until a Malefi Asante brought it to their attention.
Yeah.
So we have a connection, whether we're foundational Black Americans, whether we relate to the whole idea of being indigenous to this country, all those things. Again, those are just ways to divide us as a people. There are folks who want to discount the fact that there was a slave trade, that they didn't bring these Africans over here to America. Well, I challenge you to go to Cape Coast and stand in that dungeon and feel what you feel when you stand in the darkness of that room and you understand what was done to us. You cannot discount that experience. And I understand the whole idea of sovereignty and that they stole this country from us and they've implemented this democratic system to justify taking the land away from us because they came over here as immigrants and basically gangstered the land and then push people into places where they couldn't sustain themselves and then poison them with the food that they were bringing to them and the alcohol that they brought in, and then gave them a few of them some casinos so that they could make so they make a little bit of money, and still exist in that paradigm of oppression that was placed upon them. The history of this country is so layered. There have been so many demonic things that have happened. When you look at the way that we've been treated as a people and continue to be treated as a people. I live less than a quarter of a mile from a market that I don't go to because the food that I need to eat ain't there. I got to drive all the way out to Golden Gate, drive to University Heights to go to Whole Foods. Might drive down to Meyer, but what they got in Meyer is priced for the Cleveland Clinic employees and not for the people who live in the neighborhood. Those are the levels of racism that we deal with in this society. We look at places being redefined. Now Huff is Midtown. They don't want to say Huff because it's connected to an uprising of African Americans or Black people or whatever term you want to use to characterize them. But the gentrification is real. Them taking back what is ours is real. These are certain realities, but it's all about. Go ahead.
In addition to everything you said, we got to acknowledge the European Americans who I have a friend, and I can say her name. I know she won't have a problem with her. Her name is Linda. And I met her on tour with Gladys Knight. She said she was raised in a racist home. And she broke that generational cycle. She stayed with a Black person, lived with a Black person for a few months just to see what it was like to be with a Black person. And after living with that Black person for a few months, she decided she didn't want to be racist anymore. And so we have to acknowledge those people who have stood for equality and pushing for change. And like you even said, Brother Antonio, have even given their lives. It's like in a relationship, like, you want to acknowledge the good because like then it encourages more of that. You don't want to just focus on what's not going on. But if there's any little good, even if it's a small good, then we want to encourage and say thank you for the people who may be European American who are standing up for equality and saying, hey, we can do better. So it all in the same breath, two things can be true. What you're saying is right, And I'm in agreement that we have to be aware of how to move so that we can sustain ourselves and so that we can move ahead as a human family. And at the same time, I acknowledge and thank those European Americans who are standing on righteousness and thinking about how we all are affected, even our planet Earth.
Yeah.
You know what? Just
if,
go ahead.
if I could just real quickly, I want to acknowledge historically that there have been Europeans who have been our allies. So if you look at the abolitionists who did what they could to get Black folk from the South to Canada and places in the North, historically there have been those who are on our side. Kudos to Linda for taking the initiative to understand truth as opposed to understanding the narrative that she was given that demonizes us. So I don't want to, cast a wide brushstroke and, say that they all bad and they not with us, because there are so many of them that are. I think of a person who is my colleague on the board of the Cleveland Observer. And I know the level at which he operates gives him a certain sense of identity and connection to us, even though he's Jewish. So,
we're all just really one human family.
Exactly. I'm agreeing with you.
Tribe of Eli's motto is, our motto is one planet, one sound, and not necessarily a musical sound, but the sound of love,
Right.
We all have different complexions, but we're all one human family. And the illusion is that there's Black, white, Jewish, German, Asian, that's the illusion, but we're just one earth and one human family. And we better figure this thing out soon before we self-destruct.
We figuring it out, brother.
Yeah.
Antonio.
Yeah, here's the thing too about like your friend Linda. Her experience helped her. But just like you said before about this demon that's going to turn around. Well, I shouldn't call it a demon. This entity that's going to turn around and it is today biting them in the behind is that internet, what you was talking about. And I think a lot of our European brothers and sisters are being turned on to information. Information is making people okay, and that's coming out like, Dad, that's not what I was taught in my racist family. I believe that because the lack of information, a lot of them is ignorant to the fact like that. See, but when she stepped out and put herself in an environment for her to learn and to see and to challenge the information that she had was given to her family. And she said, oh, no, this is incorrect. And then it's being supported with information that is coming out that is helping us, helping the planet with understanding that there's a group that's trying to drive and keep this wedge going on and have ulterior motives behind doing it, and once we come together, and understand that more and come out and talk about it, we can look at those things. And lastly is that, again, we have to change. If we change, he has no choice but to change. And the things that he's getting off right now and able to do, because we're still in the same mindset, operating day to day with the same type of energy that we're bringing. The lack of, let me say, the same type of lack of energy and knowledge that we're dealing with. And he's able to manipulate that and keep us in this position. So we change ourselves by knowledge and information. He has no choice but to change because you change.
Yeah, and just to embellish what you just said, many times it's them who's telling us the truth about the situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You got folks like, I think his name is Tim White. And then you got some everyday people that are getting on and giving you the history and telling you the truth about the situation. So it's not that they don't know, because they are among those who are spreading the word and spreading the information. And again, Elijah, I fully, completely, and totally agree with you. one family, one love, because love is the answer. And I think music is the thing that brings us together, that connects it to that spirit of love that allows, 20,000 people to be in an arena watching Earth, Wind, and Fire and doing this.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Everybody's together, everybody's feeling music, everybody's getting the message, everybody is united by music to get to that place of love that can allow them to cast aside their differences and to realize that we're all one family. So this has been an amazing conversation, Elijah, and I think, and I don't think, I know that everything happens for a reason. And that's the reason that we were able to have this conversation today. And my prayer and my trust is that anybody who witnessed this conversation was able to take something away from it that perhaps gave them an additional perspective, maybe enhanced their comprehension. Because I push away from using the word understanding, because it has implications too. Standing under somebody means that you are in a place of being oppressed. So I push back on that. I'm very, very increasingly more mindful of language and the power of our words and the power of our thoughts. So my prayer and my trust, not my belief, but my trust, and not my hope, but my trust, is that someone who witnessed this program, or those who may watch this in the future, took something away from this to change their perspective, alter their perspective, perhaps enhance their perspective, and comprehend that we're moving in the right direction, that there is no need for us to exist in a state of hopelessness and helplessness, that we are all equipped to do whatever is necessary to save each other and to save this planet. Unlike having that alien up there in outer space with that pin to burst the bubble that results in the death of everyone. They want us to believe that they have the power to do that. That's why that film is out there, because they want to plant that seed that they have the control and the ability to destroy us all. That's the ultimate message that I took away from that film. And see, what they do is they plant those seeds, and then subconsciously you buy into that. But there are opposing forces, and my trust is that these opposing forces will prevail, and we are the opposing force. So
Absolutely.
yeah, anything in closing, Elijah, before we release you, because we know you got a student to take care of. So
we have to choose love over fear. A lot of negative behavior is rooted in fear. Like if we say racism, for instance, that's a group of people thinking that they're superior or that people are beneath them. In psychology, anybody that has a superior mindset is actually rooted in an inferiority complex. So we have to find the courage to get past fear, and we got to be able to think long term. Okay, making these quick dollars now are great, but what is it doing to our water? What is it doing to our rainforest? What about our great grandkids and our children of our future? We have to be able to choose values like love over fear. And I know that's a hard thing. Fear will immobilize us or have us doing things in anxiety that, but I believe we can do it. I know change comes slow, but I believe that we can operate as one human family without attack from aliens. I believe that we can coexist as one human family and preserve planet Earth. And we have to just choose love over fear.
okay, well said, Brother Antonio.
Yeah, and just tagging that what you just said. Yeah, it does, change does come slow, but when the creator put his hands in it, you'd be like, how did that happen? Because some of the things you see, we weren't expecting the Abraham Traore over in Bikini Faso. That just came like bam, you know, to us. You know, it was, I'm sure it was moves was making over there, but as far as globally and wide, it like came on the scene like bam. And the moves and the changes that he's making throughout the whole continent, that happens when the creator and laws of principles are in place, that evil is going to be stamped out eventually. You can't build a strong foundation on evil and murderous tendencies and things like that. That's why we're going to have a problem in this country. But then I want to leave with saying this. Let's teach our children the real science of life. You know, we didn't understand them. We got a little small abbreviated version when we was in kids. All the atoms in this pen they're moving. They're just moving at a slower rate of vibration. So that means let's go further and tell our children, like, so that means everything is alive. If everything is moving, that means everything is alive. And that's
can I add to that, Brother Antonio?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So yes, the tree gives us oxygen and we give it carbon dioxide. We're one.
Yes.
We're one planet. We're one people. And we have to be able to see things as one. What happens to France happens to us. What happens to Africa, it ultimately happens to us as a humankind and as one planet.
Spiritual world. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all connected. And see, and just imagine our kids, you know, understanding. You delivered it in a way that they understand that connectiveness. You know, I even, you know, talk about we need to know the anatomy of our body. How many people know where the organs at and what they need to run optimally and things? It's like out of sight, out of mind. So we're doing our children a disservice. We letting we letting the takeover and the takedown go on without challenging it. You know, we're not challenging it, and they're getting it off. And that's why we're raising the type of people we're raising right now that don't appreciate some of the civil liberties that our people in the past have died for in order for them to be in the position that they're in right now. They don't understand that because other people and another race of people didn't want to hear that no more. You see, that's coming back around circle right now. They want to take history out of class, don't want to talk about things because it make their children feel embarrassed or whatever. We need to understand that, but you got to teach them that with understanding, meaning that it's not a hate situation, but you need to understand your history and what happened and how those things in the past form your present ideology.
Absolutely. And emotional intelligence will give us the tools of how to frame things in a healthy, productive way that will allow us to heal as a human family, address some of the issues that we've been dealing with, and be able to progress forward
and maintain, like Vince said, at a higher level of vibration and consciousness by doing it. Understanding those negative acts of that was you know, put towards us was people operating at a lower vibrational energy, and understand that we should strive to be at a higher level of energy, and that's where you're going to get your rewards from.
Absolutely.
So if I could wrap everything up, I'm in agreement with what both of you have just shared. The fear that is being used to control the planet is that lower vibrational frequency. Love is the higher vibrational frequency. And I want to challenge the idea that change comes slowly, because we're living in an age where we've seen an acceleration of things. You know, you look at what AI is doing, you look at what technology is doing, and, you know, since that planetary conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn back in 2020, we've seen a change in the perception of time and how time is progressing. So I just want to put out there that the change that we want to see, the change that we desire, is going to happen sooner than later. I'll just leave it there. I conclude my broadcast by saying, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. And I just want to expand the idea that to know yourself is to know God. To know yourself is to love God. And to know yourself is to be God. It's really that simple. We're all divine beings having a human experience. We're all connected to the great intelligence that created this earth. There's no separation. We are part of that whole paradigm. And the sooner that we realize that, the sooner we'll be able to see the change that we want to see on that planet. So with that, I will say, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace, peace. All right.